When my doctor slipped me a handwritten note that read, "Don't go home, run," I left it off as a mistake. But that night, when I finally pushed open my own front door, the smell hit first, copper and fear. A single blood-red rose waited on the coffee table, with a note in my husband's handwriting. "Welcome home, Emily." What I found hidden inside our perfect house shattered everything I believed about my marriage, my family, and the man who kissed me goodnight every night for 12 years. He wasn't my husband. He was my watcher, my poisoner, my captor. And phase 3 was just the beginning. This is the true story of the night I discovered the monster sleeping next to me. Watch if you dare. I can still hear the low, steady buzz of the fluorescent lights in Dr. Harlan's exam room, the kind of sound that crawls under your skin after a while and never quite leaves. It was a Thursday in late October, the air outside crisp enough that I'd worn my favorite camel coat, the one Mark always said made me look like I belonged in a Nancy Meyers movie. Routine checkup, nothing dramatic. Just the annual poking and prodding I'd been putting off for months because life felt too full to deal with doctors. For weeks I'd been off. Not sick, not the kind of thing that sends you to the ER, but wrong in small, nagging ways. A low-grade headache that never quite went away. Dizziness when I stood up too fast. Nausea that rolled in like fog around 3 every afternoon. Exhaustion so deep it felt like someone had drained the battery in my chest. I blamed the usual suspects, turning 42 next month, running a part-time freelance editing business from our home office, keeping up with Mark's endless dinner party circuit, pretending I wasn't still grieving my mother, even though it had been 9 years. Normal midlife static, right? Mark had noticed. Of course he noticed. He always noticed the smallest shifts in me. "You look pale, Em," he'd said the night before, brushing my hair back while we stood at the kitchen island drinking Pinot. "Promise me you'll make the appointment." His thumb traced my cheekbone the way it had 1,000 times, gentle, possessive, in the sweetest way. I promised. He kissed my forehead and went back to reviewing deposition transcripts on his laptop, the blue glow lighting up the sharp angles of his face. So there I was, perched on the crinkly paper of the exam table, legs swinging like a kid, while Dr. Harlan, new to the practice, maybe mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, wire-rimmed glasses, flipped through my chart on his tablet. He'd taken over for old Dr. Patel 6 months earlier, and everyone said he was brilliant, but quiet. Too quiet, some of the nurses whispered. The kind of doctor who listened more than he talked. He asked the standard questions. Sleep? Diet? Stress? I answered honestly. He nodded, typed, nodded again. Then he drew blood, 3 vials, the needles smooth and practiced, and sent the nurse out. When she closed the door, he pulled the rolling stool over and sat, elbows on his knees, looking at me in a way no doctor ever had. Not clinical, not sympathetic, something else. Urgent. "Your labs came back preliminary," he said quietly. "We rushed them because of your history of fatigue." I felt a small, cold knot form under my ribs. "And?" He didn't answer right away. He reached into the pocket of his white coat, pulled out a small prescription pad, and started writing. I assumed it was Zofran for the nausea, maybe something for the headaches, standard protocol. But when he tore the sheet off and handed it to me, his fingers stayed on mine a beat too long. I looked down. Not a prescription. Black ink, hurried scrawl across the pale blue paper. "Don't go home. Run." My laugh came out sharp and thin, the nervous kind you make when you're not sure if someone's joking. Is this some kind of mix-up? His eyes never left mine. It's not a mix-up. I stared at the words again, waiting for them to rearrange into something sensible. They didn't. "Dr. Harlan, I don't understand." He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You need to leave Charlotte. Tonight. Don't pack anything that can be tracked. Don't use your phone after you walk out of here. Don't tell anyone where you're going, especially not your husband." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the exam table. "Mark, you're talking about my husband." I know exactly who I'm talking about. Something in his tone, low, certain, almost frightened, made the hairs on my arms stand up. He's a lawyer. We've been married 12 years. He's the one who told me to come here. I'm aware. Dr. Harlan glanced toward the closed door, like he expected someone to kick it open. Emily, I've seen your blood work. There are things in your system that shouldn't be there. Heavy metals. Not enough to kill you quickly, but enough to keep you weak, confused, dependent. Someone has been dosing you. Slowly. Deliberately. My mouth went dry. That's impossible. Is it? He tilted his head. The dizziness, the nausea, the memory lapses you've started mentioning in passing. You told the intake nurse last month you thought you were losing your mind. I had said that. I'd laughed when I said it, embarrassed. Now the laugh felt like it belonged to someone else. I can't just run, I whispered. We have a house, a life. He'll think something happened to me. That's the point, Dr. Harlan said. He already knows something's happening. He's counting on you coming home tonight, sitting across from him at that beautiful walnut table, eating the dinner he probably has waiting in the crock pot. He'll ask how the appointment went. He'll listen. He'll comfort you. And tomorrow, you'll feel worse. And the day after that, worse still. Until one day, you don't wake up wondering what's wrong. You just won't wake up.
My pulse hammered in my ears. Why are you telling me this? Why not call the police right now? Because he's careful. He's connected. He has people who owe him favors. If I call the authorities in front of you, he'll know within the hour. You'll never make it out of this building. That's why I'm giving you this. He tapped the note in my hand. And that's why you have to move fast. I looked at him, really looked. There were shadows under his eyes, a tightness around his mouth that hadn't been there when he first walked in. He was scared. For me. I slid off the table. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. What do I do? Leave through the side exit, staff only. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks east, the one with the green awning. Go in, use their bathroom, ditch your phone in the trash can behind the counter when no one's looking. Buy a burner if you can, cash only. Get on a bus, any bus. Head north, south, west, doesn't matter. Just don't go home. I nodded, numb. And you? I'll handle what I can from here, but you can't contact me again. Not until it's safe. I folded the note, shoved it deep into my coat pocket. My fingers brushed the keys to the Subaru parked 2 rows from the entrance, the car Mark had bought me for my 40th birthday, the car with the built-in GPS he'd insisted on for safety. I met Dr. Harlan's eyes one last time. If this is a mistake, it's not.
I opened the door. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Nurses moved past me, clipboards in hand, oblivious. I walked, didn't run, toward the side exit like I belonged there. Outside, the October wind slapped my face. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking, not toward the parking lot, toward the green awning coffee shop 2 blocks east. Behind me, I could feel the weight of our perfect colonial house waiting. The red front door, the hydrangeas I planted, the man who kissed my forehead every morning like I was the only thing that mattered in his world. I didn't look back, but every step felt like betrayal, and every step felt like survival. The walk from the coffee shop to the parking garage felt like moving through water. Every step dragged. My legs were heavy, my thoughts sloshing around in slow motion. I'd done what Dr. Harlan told me to do, slipped into the bathroom at the little indie place on Tryon Street, the one with the mismatched mugs and the chalkboard menu that always smelled like cinnamon. I'd dropped my iPhone into the metal trash can under the sink, right on top of a soggy paper towel and someone's half-eaten scone, then walked out without looking back. No goodbye text to Mark, no running late to my editor, nothing, just gone. I'd bought a cheap burner phone with the last of the cash in my wallet, $47 and change. It sat in my coat pocket now like a foreign object, silent and unfamiliar. I hadn't turned it on yet. I wasn't sure I ever would. The Subaru was still in the same spot on level 3, silver paint catching the sodium glow of the overhead lights. I slid behind the wheel, hands shaking so badly I fumbled the key twice before it caught. The engine purred to life, familiar and comforting in a way that made my chest ache. This car had taken us to the mountains last fall, windows down, Mark singing off-key to Springsteen. We'd stopped at that little orchard and picked apples until our fingers were sticky. He'd kissed me against the trunk of the car, tasting like cider and October. I'd thought, this is it. This is the life I was supposed to have after everything fell apart. Now, the memory felt poisoned. I drove. Not fast, not slow, just drove. The beltway looped around Charlotte like a noose, and I stayed in the right lane, letting cars whip past me. Rush hour was thinning out. The sky had gone the bruised purple of early dusk. Streetlights flickered on one by one. Every few minutes I glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Mark's black Audi sliding up behind me, his easy smile in the glass. But there was nothing, just taillights and the occasional delivery truck. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Dr. Harlan was wrong, or lying, or having some kind of episode. Doctors snapped sometimes. Burnout, stress, whatever. Maybe he'd misread the labs. Maybe the heavy metals were from old paint in the house, or the well water we tested 3 years ago and forgotten about. Maybe the note was a hallucination born from my own spiraling anxiety. But the words were still there, folded in my pocket, ink bleeding slightly where my sweaty palm had pressed against it. Don't go home. Run. I should have kept driving. Should have taken I-85 north toward Virginia, or south toward Atlanta, or anywhere that wasn't the exit for Myers Park. But habit is a powerful thing. 12 years of turning left at the same stop sign, 12 years of pulling into the same driveway, 12 years of coming home to the same man. Muscle memory won. The suburbs unfolded around me like a dream I'd had 1,000 times. Wide streets lined with Bradford pears, their leaves just starting to turn gold and red. Porch lights glowing warmly, kids on bikes weaving between mailboxes. Normal, safe, exactly the life Mark and I had built after my first husband died in that stupid, senseless car wreck on I-77. Mark had been there then, kind, steady, patient. He'd helped me pack up the old apartment, helped me sell the house I couldn't bear to live in anymore. He'd proposed on the back porch of this very house, down on one knee with my mother's ring resized because my fingers had gotten thinner from grief. I'd said yes because he made the emptiness feel smaller. I turned onto our street. The Colonial looked the same as always. White clapboard, black shutters, the red front door I'd painted myself one spring weekend while Mark grilled steaks and teased me about getting primer on my jeans. The hydrangeas I'd planted along the walkway were still holding their last blooms, pale blue against the gathering dark. The porch light was already on. Mark always set the timer so I wouldn't come home to a dark house. Thoughtful, sweet. I sat in the driveway with the engine running for what felt like forever. 10 minutes, 15. The dashboard clock ticked past 6:42 p.m. Mark would be home soon. Probably already was. He'd have loosened his tie, poured himself a bourbon, checked the crock pot. Chicken cacciatore tonight, my favorite. He texted me the recipe this morning with a winking emoji. I killed the engine. Silence rushed in. I got out slowly. The air smelled like wood smoke and cut grass. Leaves crunched under my boots. I walked up the flagstone path, keys jingling in my hand like wind chimes. My heart was loud enough I was sure the neighbors could hear it. At the door, I hesitated. The brass knocker gleamed under the porch light. I lifted my hand to knock. Stupid, since it was my own house, then let it fall. Instead, I turned the knob. The door opened without resistance. Unlocked. The smell hit me first. Metallic, coppery, wrong. Like pennies left in the rain, like something burnt underneath it. Mark? My voice sounded small in the foyer. No answer. I stepped inside. The entry light was on low, the one on the dimmer switch Mark liked to set to romantic evenings. Our wedding photo hung on the wall to my left, us laughing on a cliff in Santorini, wind in my hair, his arm around my waist. I looked happy. I remembered being happy. The living room opened up ahead. The lamp on the end table was lit, casting long shadows across the cream rug. Everything looked perfect. Throw pillows fluffed, magazines fanned on the coffee table, the faint scent of the cedar candle we always burned when company was coming. Then I saw the rose. A single, long-stemmed red rose lay across the glass coffee table. Not from our garden. Our bushes were done for the season. This one was fresh, petals velvet dark, still dewy. A few had fallen off, scattered like drops of blood on the wood. Beneath it, a small white card. I moved closer on legs that didn't feel like mine. The handwriting was unmistakable. Mark's neat, slanted script, the way the M in my name always looped just so. Welcome home, Emily. My stomach lurched. I hadn't told him I was coming straight home. I hadn't texted. I hadn't called. He should have been wondering where I was, maybe texting me by now, maybe worried. But he'd left a note. For me. Exactly here. Exactly now. I backed up a step. My heel caught the edge of the rug. I turned toward the stairs, then the kitchen, then back to the door. Every direction felt wrong. The house was too quiet. No hum of the refrigerator, no tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, just my breathing, ragged and loud. I reached into my pocket for the burner phone. My fingers closed. Then I heard it, soft, distant, from upstairs. The faint creak of floorboards. Someone was moving. The creak from upstairs stopped as suddenly as it started. I stood frozen in the foyer, one hand still on the doorknob, the other clutching the burner phone so hard the plastic edges bit into my palm. The rose sat there on the coffee table like an accusation, petals perfect and obscene against the pale wood. I wanted to grab it, crush it, throw it out the window, but moving felt dangerous, like any sudden motion might trigger something worse. I forced myself to breathe, in through the nose, out through the mouth, the way the therapist had taught me after Ryan's accident. Slow, controlled. Except now the air tasted wrong, thick with that copper tang that clung to the back of my throat. I told myself it was just my imagination. Imagination and panic, and whatever poison Dr. Harlan claimed was swimming in my bloodstream. Mark wasn't home. He couldn't be. His Audi wasn't in the driveway. The garage door was down. He always parked inside when he got home first, habit from the city days when car break-ins were common. So the house was empty. It had to be. The floorboard creak had probably been the old house settling. These colonials from the 20s did that sometimes, especially when the temperature dropped after sunset. I'd heard it 100 times before, while reading in bed or folding laundry. Nothing to panic over. Except everything felt different now. The shadows in the corners looked sharper. The wedding photo on the wall seemed to watch me. Even the grandfather clock in the hall, silent tonight, felt like it was holding its breath. I needed proof this was all in my head. Proof I could show Mark when he walked through the door any minute, tie loosened, asking why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I'd laugh it off, tell him about a weird doctor, the note, the paranoia. He'd pull me into a hug, tell me I was overworked, maybe suggest we take that weekend trip to Asheville we'd been talking about. Normal, safe. But first, I had to check upstairs. I moved quietly, avoiding the spots on the hardwood that squeaked. Past the living room, up the wide staircase with its carved banister I'd always loved. The runner muffled my steps. At the landing, I paused, listening. Nothing, just the faint hum of the HVAC kicking on somewhere below. Our bedroom door was closed. Guest room across the hall, also closed. Bathroom door ajar, light off. I went to our room first, pushed the door open slowly. Everything as it should be. Bed made with the white duvet Mark preferred. Hospital corners because he liked things precise. My nightstand, half-read copy of a thriller. Water glass with a faint lipstick print. The small silver frame holding a photo of my mother laughing at the beach. Mark's side, alarm clock set to 5:45 a.m., his reading glasses folded neatly, the deposition folder he'd been working on last night still open to the same page. No sign of him, no briefcase by the dresser, no suit jacket slung over the chair. Relief washed through me, thin and temporary. Then I remembered the guest room. We almost never used it. When we bought the house, Mark had called it future nursery, with that half smile of his, but the years passed and the door stayed closed. He'd said it was for storage, old files, holiday decorations, the things we didn't want cluttering the attic. I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? I trusted him with everything. The knob was cool under my fingers, I turned it. The door swung inward without resistance. No lock, no resistance at all. Darkness inside at first. Then I flicked the wall switch. A desk. Not the antique roll top we kept in the attic. A sleek, black, modern one, the kind you see in high-end home offices. A laptop, closed, silver, no brand sticker. A corkboard on the wall above it, covered edge to edge with photographs and papers. A single banker's lamp cast a tight pool of yellow light across the surface. I stepped inside. The air was cooler here, almost stale, like the room hadn't been aired out in months. The photos were all of me. Not the casual snapshots Mark kept on his phone or framed around the house. These were different, invasive. One for my high school yearbook, junior year, me in the marching band uniform, clarinet raised. Another from college, standing outside my dorm at UNC, laughing with friends I hadn't spoken to in years. A grainy printout of my driver's license photo from when I renewed it in 2018. A hospital bracelet for my tonsillectomy when I was 8. God, how had he gotten that? My mother's death certificate, yellowed at the edges, official state seal in the corner. My first apartment lease in New York, the one I'd signed right after graduation, before I moved back south. And then the newer ones. Me asleep in our bed, mouth slightly open, hair across the pillow, taken from above, close enough I could see the freckles on my collarbone. Me in the shower, steam on the glass but not enough to obscure the shape of my body. Me at the kitchen table last month, head in my hands, crying over some stupid work deadline. The angle was wrong, too high, too close, like someone had been standing right behind me. My knees buckled. I caught myself on the edge of the desk. There was more. A printed timeline tacked below the photos, dates marching down the page in neat black ink. 1998. Subject born, Charlotte, NC. 2006. Tonsillectomy, Presbyterian Hospital. 2014. Marriage to Ryan Whitaker. 2016. Ryan Whitaker fatal MVC, I-77. 2017. First contact, observed at memorial service. 2018. Relocation to current residence. 2020. Marriage to subject. 2024. Symptoms initiated. Low-dose thallium, quarterly adjustments. 2025. Phase 3 complete. Extraction imminent. Extraction. The word stared back at me, circled twice in red Sharpie. I reached out, fingers trembling, and touched the paper. It was real. The ink was real. The timeline was real. This wasn't storage. This was surveillance. This was a case file. And I was the subject. My phone, the burner, buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out, heart slamming against my ribs. Unknown number. I stared at the screen, didn't answer. It rang again and again. I hit accept before I could talk myself out of it. Emily. Mark's voice. Calm. Warm. The same voice that said, "I love you," every night before we turned out the light. "Where are you?" I whispered. Close enough. A soft exhale, almost a laugh. "Did you find the room?" I couldn't speak. "You always were curious," he said. "That's one of the things I loved about you from the beginning. That sharp mind, that need to know." "Mark, don't panic, not yet." His tone shifted, gentle but edged. "Just breathe, you're safe for now." "Safe?" The word came out choked. "You're home. That's where you belong." I backed toward the door, eyes darting to the corkboard, the timeline, the photos of me sleeping. "I have to go," I said. "No," he answered softly. "You don't." The line went dead. I stood there in the dim light of the hidden room, surrounded by the evidence of a life I thought was mine, and realized I had never really been alone in it. Not once. The burner phone slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor of the hidden room. The screen cracked, a thin spiderweb across the cheap plastic, but the call had already ended. Mark's voice lingered in my ears like smoke, calm, amused, almost tender. You always were curious. The same tone he used when I caught him watching me read on the couch, when he'd say, "You get this little furrow between your brows when you're concentrating. It's adorable." I moved quietly, avoiding the spots on the hardwood that squeaked. Past the living room, up the wide staircase with its carved banister I'd always loved. The runner muffled my steps. At the landing, I paused, listening. Nothing. Just the faint hum of the HVAC kicking on somewhere below. Our bedroom door was closed. Guest room across the hall, also closed. Bathroom door ajar, light off. I went to our room first, pushed the door open slowly. Everything as it should be. Bed made with the white duvet Mark preferred. Hospital corners, because he liked things precise. My nightstand, half-read copy of a thriller. Water glass with a faint lipstick print. The small silver frame holding a photo of my mother laughing at the beach. Mark sighed. Alarm clock set to 5:45 a.m. His reading glasses folded neatly. The deposition folder he'd been working on last night still open to the same page. No sign of him. No briefcase by the dresser. No suit jacket slung over the chair. Relief washed through me, thin and temporary. Then I remembered the guest room. We almost never used it. When we bought the house, Mark had called it future nursery with that half smile of his, but the years passed and the door stayed closed. He'd said it was for storage. Old files, holiday decorations, the things we didn't want cluttering the attic. I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? I trusted him with everything. The knob was cool under my fingers. I turned it. The door swung inward without resistance. No lock. No resistance at all. Darkness inside at first. Then I flicked the wall switch.
Emily. Mark again. No hello, no surprise, like he'd been waiting. My mouth was cotton. What do you want? A soft chuckle. Familiar. Intimate. The sound he made when I teased him about his terrible golf swing. I want you to stop panicking. Sit down. Breathe. We can talk this through. Talk what through? My voice cracked. The poison? The cameras? The timeline of my entire goddamn life? Silence on his end. Then, you're upset. I get it. Finding out you've been observed? It's a lot. Observed? I laughed, bitter and broken. You've been drugging me, Mark. For years. Thallium, that's what the doctor said. Heavy metals. That's why I've been sick. That's why I've been losing my mind. Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice dropped lower, almost soothing. I never wanted to hurt you. Not really. The doses were controlled. Just enough to keep you off balance, dependent, closer to me. Closer? I gripped the banister so hard my knuckles whitened. You married me. You said you loved me. I do love you. No hesitation. Absolute certainty. More than anyone ever could. That's why I had to be careful. You're strong, Emily. Resilient. After Ryan died, you rebuilt everything. New career, new city, new life. You didn't need anyone. But I needed you to need me. I slid down to sit on the bottom step. The wood was cold through my jeans. You are insane. Maybe. He sounded almost thoughtful. But I'm not wrong. You were slipping away. Little by little. Working late. Talking about going back to New York. Mentioning old friends. I could see it. The distance growing. I couldn't lose you. Not like I lost. He stopped. Lost who? I whispered. A long exhale. Doesn't matter now. It matters to me. You don't need to know everything yet. His tone shifted again, gentler, coaxing. Come sit in the living room. I left wine open. Your favorite Pernay. We can talk face to face when I get there. You're coming here. I'm already on my way. 10 minutes, maybe less. My heart jackhammered. Don't. Emily. Patient. Like he was talking me off a ledge. Running won't help. You think I didn't plan for that? The car's disabled. Your credit cards are flagged. Any attempt to use them triggers an alert to me. Your passport's in the safe. And I changed the combination last month. You're not going anywhere tonight. S stood up so fast the room tilted. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand. I'm not the monster you think I am. I'm protecting us. Protecting you from yourself. From making mistakes. From leaving. I moved toward the front door, steps silent on the rug. The doctor knew. He tried to warn me. A beat of silence. Then colder. Dr. Harlan's been watching too long. He thinks he's the hero in this story. He's not. He's just another complication. How do you even know him? I know a lot of people, Em. The nickname landed like a slap. He's been treating you for what, 6 months? I chose him. Made sure we got the opening at the practice. Easier to keep tabs that way. My hand was on the doorknob now. I turned it slowly. The latch clicked. Don't, Mark said quietly. Don't open that door. I froze. I can hear you, he continued. The little squeak the knob makes, the way your breathing changes when you're scared. I know every sound you make. I let go of the knob like it burned. Good girl, he murmured. Now go sit down, pour yourself a glass. When I get there, we'll figure this out together, like we always do. I backed away from the door. My legs hit the couch. I sank onto it. The cushion still smelled faintly of his cologne, sandalwood and citrus, the same scent I used to bury my face in when he held me. I don't want to hurt you, he said again, softer now, almost pleading. But if you force my hand, I will. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. The screen was dark. No signal bars. No way to call out. I looked around the living room, the perfect room we'd designed together, the cream rug I'd picked out because it felt like walking on clouds, the walnut coffee table he'd refinished himself one winter weekend. The rose, still lying there, petals slightly curled now as if wilting from the tension in the air. Outside, tires crunched on the driveway gravel. Headlights swept across the front windows, slow, deliberate. A car door opened, closed. Footsteps on the flagstone path. I didn't move. I couldn't. Because the man walking up to my front door wasn't a stranger. He was my husband, and he knew exactly where to find me. The phone went silent in my hand, but the echo of Mark's voice stayed, soft, reasonable, terrifying. Good girl. 2 words that used to feel like affection. Now they felt like chains. I couldn't stay on the couch, couldn't sit and wait for him to walk through that red door with his easy smile and his explanations that would twist everything back into place. Not this time. I had maybe 10 minutes, less if he'd been closer than he let on. The headlights had swept the windows only moments ago. He was already here. Or almost here. I bolted upright, coat still on, boots still laced. The living room felt too exposed. Big windows, open sight lines from the street. I moved fast but quiet, avoiding the creaky 3rd step on the stairs. No point in going back to the hidden room. I already knew what was there. Instead, I headed straight for the kitchen. My keys were still in my pocket. The Subaru was in the driveway. If I could get it started, I could peel out, hit the highway, disappear into the night. Dr. Harlan had said run, anywhere. I'd do that now. I slipped through the swinging door into the kitchen. The crock pot was still on low, the smell of chicken and tomatoes thick in the air. Normal, domestic, mocking. The knife block sat on the counter. I grabbed the biggest chef's knife, the one Mark always used for carving roasts. The blade caught the under cabinet light and flashed. I tucked it into the deep pocket of my coat, handle out for quick draw. Back door first, safer than the front. I unlocked the deadbolt, turned the knob slowly. The hinges didn't squeak. Mark oiled them every spring like clockwork. Outside, the backyard was dark, except for the motion sensor light over the patio. It clicked on as I stepped out, flooding the flagstones in harsh white. I froze, waiting for movement, for him to appear from around the side of the house. Nothing. I sprinted across the grass, coat flapping, boots pounding. The side gate was latched but not locked, another of his habits, in case of emergency. I yanked it open and slipped into the narrow alley between our house and the neighbor's privacy fence. The driveway was ahead. The Subaru sat under the carport, silver paint dull in the shadows. I reached it, yanked the driver's door, unlocked, thank God, and slid inside. Key in ignition. Turn. Nothing. No click, no crank. Just dead silence. I tried again, pumped the gas, still nothing. Then I saw it. The hood was slightly ajar, not latched all the way. I got out, heart hammering, and lifted it. Battery cables, both positive and negative, had been severed. Clean cuts, no fraying. Fresh. Someone had done this tonight, probably while I was still at the doctor's office or driving home.
The copper ends glinted under the motion light like exposed veins. I slammed the hood shut, too loud. The sound echoed off the houses. Headlights swept the street, slow, deliberate. A black SUV idled at the curb 2 houses down. No plates visible from this angle. Tinted windows. Engine idling low. Predatory. I ducked behind the Subaru, crouching low. The SUV didn't move, just sat there, watching. I couldn't go back through the backyard. The motion light would give me away again. Front door was suicide. I needed another way out. The basement. We didn't have a basement. At least, that's what Mark had always said. The house was built on a slab, he told the realtor. No crawl space, no lower level. Just the utility closet in the hallway where we kept the water heater and the circuit breaker. But tonight, everything I thought I knew felt like a lie. I crept back inside through the kitchen door, locking it behind me. The house was still quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps upstairs, no doors opening. Maybe he was waiting me out. Maybe he enjoyed this part. I moved to the hallway off the foyer. The closet door was there, plain oak, always slightly ajar because the hinge needed adjusting. I'd asked Mark to fix it a dozen times. He'd always smiled and said, "Tomorrow, promise." I opened it now. Coats hung on the rod, his wool overcoat, my down jacket, scarves tangled together. Behind them, the back wall looked normal. White beadboard, a shelf with light bulbs and batteries. But the beadboard didn't sit flush. I pushed. Nothing. Pushed harder. A soft click. The panel swung inward on hidden hinges. Cold air rushed out, damp, musty, like earth after rain. Stairs descended into darkness. Concrete steps, narrow, painted gray. A single bare bulb hung at the bottom, switched off. I fumbled for the light switch on the inside wall. Click. The bulb flared to life. The stairs went down maybe 12 steps. At the bottom, a small landing, then another door, steel, industrial, with a keypad lock. No handle, just numbers. I stared at it. We didn't have a basement. We had a secret. My mind raced. The knife was still in my coat pocket, heavy, reassuring. I pulled it out, held it low. Then I started down. Each step echoed louder than the last. The air grew colder, thicker. At the bottom, I stopped in front of the steel door. The keypad glowed faint blue. 4 digits required. I tried our wedding date, 0614. Red light. Beep.
My birthday, 10/22, red. His, 0309, red. Then, stupid, desperate, I tried Ryan's death date, the day everything changed, 07/19/16. Green light, soft click. The door unlocked. I pushed it open. The room beyond was small, maybe 10 by 12. White walls, concrete floor. A single twin bed pushed against one wall. Thin mattress, no sheets. Chains bolted into the floorboards. Thick links, padded cuffs at the ends. A metal table in the corner. A camera mounted high in the opposite corner. Red recording light steady and unblinking. Photos on the walls. More of me. Sleeping, reading, crying, showering. Dozens of them, printed on glossy paper, taped up in neat rows. A journal lay open on the table. Mark's handwriting, precise, slanted. Entry 47. Subject responding well to gaslighting phase. Attributes memory fog and fatigue to work stress. Dosage increased to 0.8 milligrams thallium weekly. No detectable side effects beyond intended dependency. Entry 52. Dr. Harlan inserted himself. Blood draw accelerated timeline. Subject may suspect. Contingency. Disable vehicle. Prepare extraction room. My legs gave out. I sank to the floor, back against the cold wall, knife still in my hand. This wasn't a panic room. This wasn't storage. This was a cage. And I'd been living upstairs, oblivious, while he built it below. Footsteps now, faint, overhead, the floorboards creaking in the hallway. He was inside the house, coming for me. I looked at the chains, the Ed, the camera.
then at the knife in my shaking hand. I stood up slowly. If he wanted me down here, he was going to have to drag me. And I wasn't going quietly.
The steel door stood open behind me like a mouth I'd just crawled out of. I couldn't make myself close it. Closing it would mean admitting this room existed, that the chains were real, that the camera's red eye had been watching me for who knew how long. I stayed rooted to the concrete floor, back pressed against the cold wall, the chef's knife still clutched in my right hand. The blade trembled with every heartbeat. My stomach heaved. I swallowed bile and turned to the metal table. The journal lay open, spine cracked from use. Mark's handwriting filled the pages, neat, slanted, the same precise cursive he used on birthday cards and grocery lists. I didn't want to touch it. Touching it would make it realer, but I had to know. I flipped back a few pages with the tip of the knife, careful not to leave prints. Entry 33. Subject exhibits increased emotional volatility, attributed to work stress in conversation. Dosage stable at 0.6 milligram thallium biweekly via morning coffee. No gastrointestinal rejection. Dependency phase progressing as projected. Thallium. The word jumped out again. I'd heard of it once, in a true crime podcast Ryan used to listen to while he drove. Colorless, odorless, tasteless. Slow poison. Mimics other illnesses. Destroys nerves, hair, eventually organs. Undetectable in standard talk screens unless you know to look. I kept reading. Entry 41. Subject mentions memory lapses. Believes it's perimenopause. Suggested doctor visit. Controlled variable. Harlan now in practice. Monitored insertion complete. Dr. Harlan. Mark had chosen him, placed him, watched him watch me. Entry 47. Gaslighting effective. Subject questions own perceptions daily. Am I losing my mind? Asked unfronted. Affirmative reinforcement provided. You're just tired, babe. Dosage increased to 0.8 milligrams. Extraction window narrows to 14 to 21 days. Extraction. That word again. Like I was a tooth to be pulled, a tumor to be cut out. Entry 52. Complication. Harlan accelerated blood draw. Heavy metal levels approaching detectable threshold. Subject may suspect environmental cause. Vehicle disabled. Basement prepped. If she finds the room early, accelerate to phase 3 endgame. Endgame. I flipped forward. The last entry was dated yesterday. Entry 58. Subject at appointment. Harlan slipped note, confirmed via planted audio in exam room. She returned home despite warning. Rose placed. Timeline card left. She will find the room tonight. Contingency, if resistance, sedation ready in fridge. Extraction proceeds at 0200 if necessary. I looked up. There was a small dorm-style fridge in the far corner, the kind college kids keep beer in. I hadn't noticed it before. I crossed the room on numb legs, opened the door. Inside, a single glass vial, clear liquid, no label. A syringe wrapped in sterile plastic. A small bottle of something amber, sedative probably, and a pack of wet wipes. He'd planned to drug me, bring me down here, chain me, finish whatever extraction meant. My knees buckled. I caught myself on the edge of the metal table, knife clattering to the floor. The sound echoed too loud in the small space. All those mornings he'd made coffee before I woke up, the way he'd hand me the mug with that soft smile. Extra strong today, Em. You look like you need it. I'd kissed him, grateful, never questioning the faint metallic aftertaste I sometimes noticed and blamed on the tap water. The dizziness, the nausea, the way my hair had started thinning at the temples last year. I joked it was stress, bought expensive shampoo. He'd hugged me from behind in the bathroom mirror and said, "You're still the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." Lies. Every tender moment laced with poison. I slid to the floor, back against the fridge, knees to my chest. Tears came hot and fast. Not just fear. Betrayal so deep it felt like someone had hollowed me out. 12 years. 12 years of believing I'd found safety after Ryan's death. 12 years of building a life with a man who'd been studying me like a specimen. The camera kept recording, red light steady. I wiped my face with my sleeve, picked up the knife again, stood. I couldn't stay down here. He'd come looking. He always knew where I was.
I climbed the stairs on shaking legs, pulled the false panel closed behind me, hung the coats back in place so it looked untouched. The hallway felt brighter now, almost normal, but nothing was normal. I moved to the kitchen, grabbed my coat from the chair where I had dropped it. The burner phone was still in the pocket. No signal, but maybe outside. Then I heard it, front door opening. Slow, deliberate. "Emily?" Mark's voice floated through the house, calm, almost cheerful. "I know you're home. I saw the car in the driveway." Footsteps in the foyer, slow, measured. "I brought takeout from that Thai place you like. Thought we could talk." He was whistling. Our song, the one from our first date, an old jazz standard he'd hummed while we danced in the living room. I backed toward the pantry door, slipped inside, closed it quietly. Shelves of canned goods, spices, the vacuum cleaner. I crouched behind the biggest box of cereal, knife raised. The whistling grew closer. He was in the kitchen now. "I know you found the rose," he said, voice low, intimate. "And the note. You always did like surprises." A cabinet opened, closed. The fridge door sucked open. "I also know you went downstairs." My breath caught. He laughed softly. "The camera feed goes straight to my phone. I watched you read the journal. You looked surprised." I pressed my back harder against the wall. "But that's okay," he continued. "Surprise is part of the process. Now come out, Em. Let's finish this together." Footsteps paused right outside the pantry door. I raised the knife higher. The knob turned. The pantry door was still cracked open an inch, just enough for me to see the hallway through the narrow slit. Mark stood there, backlit by the kitchen lights, his silhouette tall and familiar in the navy suit he'd worn to court that morning. Tie loosened, top button undone. The same casual posture he struck when he came home after a long day and asked how mine had been. He didn't look angry. He looked patient, almost amused. I stayed crouched behind the cereal boxes, knife gripped so tight my knuckles ached. My breathing was shallow, ragged. If he opened the pantry door, I'd have one chance, one swing before he overpowered me. He was stronger, always had been. Gym 3 times a week, tennis on weekends. I'd teased him about it once, called him my personal security detail. He'd laughed and kissed me hard. Now that laugh felt like a warning. He didn't move toward the pantry. Instead, he walked to the island, pulled out a bar stool, and sat, casual, like we were about to discuss vacation plans. "I know you're in there, Em," he said quietly. "I can see your shadow under the door." I didn't answer. He sighed, the soft, disappointed sound he used when I forgot to unload the dishwasher. "This doesn't have to be traumatic. Come out, we'll sit down, I'll explain everything. You deserve to understand." Understand, like there was logic to any of this. I shifted slightly. My boot scraped the tile, barely audible, but he heard it. "There you are," he murmured. "Good." Footsteps, slow, approaching the pantry. I raised the knife higher, heart slamming against my ribs. Then, nothing. The footsteps stopped. A new sound, the landline in the study ringing, sharp, old-fashioned trill cutting through the silence. Mark paused. The phone rang again. He exhaled through his nose. "That's probably the office. Late deposition prep. Ignore it." It rang a third time. He turned toward the study, opposite direction from the pantry. I didn't wait. I slipped out the back way, through the narrow gap between shelves and wall, into the laundry room. The door to the garage was there, locked from inside. I twisted the deadbolt, yanked it open, and ran. The garage smelled of oil and cut grass. Mark's Audi sat gleaming under the fluorescent light. My Subaru was outside, useless, but there was the old bike, rusted, flat tires, but it had a kickstand and valves. I grabbed it, wheeled it toward the side door. Behind me, the house phone stopped ringing. Then footsteps, fast now, heading back toward the kitchen. I burst out the side door into the alley, dragging the bike. The motion light snapped on. I pedaled hard down the narrow path, tires bumping over roots and gravel. The street was ahead. If I could reach it, flag a car, scream. Headlights flared at the end of the alley. The black SUV from earlier, engine revving low. I skidded to a stop, veered left onto a neighbor's lawn, cut through their backyard. Fence, low enough. I threw the bike over, climbed after it, landed hard on the other side. More houses, more yards. I ran, lungs burning, bike abandoned somewhere behind me. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Eventually, the streets blurred into one long stretch of suburbia. Quiet cul-de-sacs, porch lights, American flags limp in the still air. My legs gave out near a small strip mall on the edge of Myers Park. A 24-hour pharmacy glowed at the far end. I stumbled toward it, coat torn, hair wild, knife still in my pocket. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A night shift cashier barely looked up from her phone. I headed straight for the payphone near the restrooms, the last one I'd seen in years. Coins in the slot, fingers shaking so badly I almost dropped them. I dialed the only number I could think of. Dr. Harlan answered on the first line.
Emily. His voice cracked with relief. God, you're alive. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the phone booth. He's here, at this house. He knows I found everything. A sharp intake of breath on his end. Where are you now? Pharmacy, off Sharon Road. I ran. I didn't know where else to go. Stay there. Don't move. I'm coming. I'm already in the car. Left the office the second you didn't answer my texts. You texted? Burner to burner. You didn't get them? No signal. He must have jammed it or something. A pause. He's capable of that. Listen to me, Emily. What you found downstairs, it's worse than I thought. I swallowed. He poisoned me. For years. Valium. The journal. Entries on dosage. About gaslighting me. He planned to move me. New identity. Conditioning. What does that even mean? Harlan's voice trottoir, urgent. It means control. Complete control. He's not just obsessive. He's pathological. I first saw him 4 years ago. Different name then. Daniel Voss. Severe narcissistic personality disorder with obsessive features. He came in complaining of insomnia. I prescribed something mild, but he started asking questions, hypotheticals. What if someone needed to be
Managed? Kept dependent? I thought it was academic curiosity. Then he stopped coming. A month later, your name popped up in his file, cross-referenced from an old magazine article. Young widow rebuilds life after tragedy. He'd clipped it, kept it. My knees nearly buckled again. He targeted me because of that, because you were strong, beautiful, alone, the perfect canvas. He changed his name, his history, inserted himself into your life, stalked you long enough to learn every detail, your routines, your grief, your weaknesses. Then he became the perfect husband. The poison started small, made you rely on him more, made you doubt yourself. Classic abuser escalation, but calculated, scientific. I closed my eyes. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I couldn't prove it, not without risking you. He's connected. Lawyers, private investigators, favors owed. If I'd gone to the police without hard evidence, he'd have spun it, made me look unhinged, made you doubt me. When your labs came back today, heavy metals spiking, I knew it was now or never. I slipped you the note, prayed you'd run. I didn't. You're still breathing. That's what matters. Sirens in the distance, faint, growing closer. I called the police before I left the office, Harlan said. Anonymous tip. Suspicious activity at your address. Domestic disturbance. They're en route. Stay hidden. I'll be there in 8 minutes. I nodded, even though he couldn't see. He said you were a complication. He's right, I am, because I'm ending this tonight. The line crackled. Emily? Yeah? Whatever happens, don't go back inside alone. Promise me. I promise. The call ended. I hung up, slid down the wall beside the payphone, knife still in my coat. Outside, red and blue lights flashed against the pharmacy windows. Help was coming. But Mark was still out there. And he wasn't done. The pantry door flew open with a soft whoosh of displaced air. Mark stood framed in the doorway, backlit by the hallway sconces, his face half in shadow. He didn't look surprised to find me there. He looked satisfied, like he'd known exactly where I'd hide all along.
There you are, he said quietly, almost tenderly. I was starting to worry. I stayed crouched behind the cereal tower, knife raised in both hands now, elbows locked. My arms burned from holding the position so long. Sweat stung my eyes. He stepped inside. One measured step, then another. The pantry was narrow, barely room for 2 people without brushing shoulders. He had to turn sideways to pass the shelves. That gave me space. Maybe enough. Put the knife down, Em, he said, voice calm, reasonable, the same tone he used when I got worked up over a bad review on a freelance gig. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't come any closer. He stopped, raised both hands, palms out. No weapon visible, just him, tall, composed, suit jacket open, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows like he'd been working late. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. I never was.
Then what was the basement for? My voice cracked on the last word. The chains? The syringe? The journal where you wrote about dosing me like a lab rat? His expression flickered. Something almost like regret. That was insurance, in case you tried to leave, in case you didn't understand how much I need you. Need me? I laughed, sharp and ugly. You poisoned me for years. You faked our entire life. Not faked, he took another half step. Built. I built us something perfect. You were slipping away, talking about New York again, reconnecting with old friends, mentioning therapy. I could see the cracks. I fixed them. You didn't fix anything. You broke me. You're not broken. His voice softened. You're stronger than ever. And you're still here. That means something. I lunged. The knife slashed across his left forearm. Clean, shallow, but deep enough to draw blood. Red bloomed instantly through the white shirt cuff. He hissed, jerked back, but didn't yell, didn't even stumble. He looked down at the cut, then back at me, smiled. That's new, he said almost admiringly. You've never fought back before. Blood dripped onto the tile, slow, rhythmic plops. I backed up until my shoulders hit the wall. Stay back. He pressed his right hand over the wound, blood seeping between his fingers. You think that's going to stop me? I've bled for you before, Emily, more than you know. What does that mean? He tilted his head. You really want to know? Fine. Ryan's accident wasn't an accident. Not entirely. The world tilted. You're lying. Am I? He took another step, slower now, careful. He was drunk that night, swerving. I just helped gravity along. A nudge at the right curve on I-77. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make sure he didn't walk away.
My knees nearly gave. You killed him. I removed an obstacle. His eyes never left mine, so I could have you. Clean slate, no baggage, just us. I felt sick. The knife wavered in my grip. And when you started pulling away last year, he continued, I realized I couldn't risk losing you the same way, so I adjusted. Small doses. Made you need me again. Made you stay. Sirens now. Distant but closing fast. Red and blue flickering through the front windows, painting the hallway in pulsing light. Mark's smile faded. That's Harlan, isn't it? And the police. I didn't answer. He sighed. This isn't how I wanted it to end. He lunged. Faster than I expected. His good hand clamped around my wrist, twisting hard. Pain shot up my arm. The knife clattered to the floor, skittering under the lowest shelf. I kicked, caught him in the shin. He grunted, but didn't let go. His other arm, bleeding, slick, hooked around my waist, dragging me toward the pantry door. No! I twisted, elbowed him in the ribs. Once, twice. He grunted again, grip loosening just enough. I broke free, stumbled into the hallway. He came after me, slow, deliberate, blood trailing behind him like a dark ribbon on the hardwood. Emily, he called, almost gentle. Don't make me chase you. I ran for the front door, fumbled the deadbolt. It stuck, always stuck when it was humid. I yanked harder. Behind me, his footsteps closed the distance.
I called the police before I left the office, Harlan said. Anonymous tip. Suspicious activity at your address. Domestic disturbance. They're en route. Stay hidden. I'll be there in 8 minutes. I nodded, even though he couldn't see. He said you were a complication. He's right. I am, because I'm ending this tonight. The line crackled. Emily? Yeah? Whatever happens, don't go back inside alone. Promise me. I promise. The call ended. I hung up, slid down the wall beside the payphone, knife still in my coat. Outside, red and blue lights flashed against the pharmacy windows. Help was coming. Then, crash. The front door exploded inward. Splinters flew. 2 uniformed officers burst through, weapons drawn. Police! Hands up! Behind them, Dr. Harlan, coat flapping, face pale but determined. Mark froze in the hallway, blood dripping from his arm, hands slowly rising. One officer, tall, buzz-cut, stepped forward. On the ground, now. Mark didn't move at first, just looked at me. Really looked. Those same eyes that used to crinkle at the corners when I laughed at his jokes. I did it all for us, he said softly. You were perfect. I made you perfect. The second officer tackled him, knee in his back, cuffs snapping on. Mark didn't resist, didn't struggle, just kept his eyes on me as they hauled him up. Dr. Harlan pushed past the officers, reached me. Emily, are you hurt? I shook my head, couldn't speak. He pulled me into the living room, away from the chaos, sat me on the couch, wrapped a throw blanket around my shoulders even though I wasn't cold. Outside, more sirens, flashing lights turning the hydrangeas red and blue. They read Mark his rights. He didn't say a word, just watched me through the open door as they hauled him to the cruiser. Our eyes met one last time, but Mark was still out there, and he wasn't done. I dialed the only number I could think of. Dr. Harlan answered on the first ring.
Then, crash. The front door exploded inward, splinters flew. 2 uniformed officers burst through, weapons drawn. Police, hands up! Behind them, Dr. Harlan, coat flapping, face pale but determined. Mark froze in the hallway, blood dripping from his arm, hands slowly rising. One officer, tall, buzz-cut, stepped forward. On the ground, now. Mark didn't move at first, just looked at me. Really looked. Those same eyes that used to crinkle at the corners when I laughed at his jokes. I did it all for us, he said softly. You were perfect. I made you perfect. The second officer tackled him, knee in his back, cuffs snapping on. Mark didn't resist, didn't struggle, just kept his eyes on me as they hauled him up. Dr. Harlan pushed past the officers, reached me. Emily, are you hurt? I shook my head, couldn't speak. He pulled me into the living room, away from the chaos, sat me on the couch, wrapped a throw blanket around my shoulders, even though I wasn't cold. Outside, more sirens, flashing lights turning the hydrangeas red and blue. They read Mark his rights. He didn't say a word, just watched me through the open door as they led him to the cruiser. Our eyes met one last time.
The hospital room smelled like bleach and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, too steady. I sat on the edge of the bed in a thin paper gown, legs dangling, bare feet not quite touching the cold linoleum. An IV dripped saline into the crook of my left arm. Standard protocol, the nurse had said, to flush your system. They'd drawn blood 3 times already. Heavy metal panel, full tox screen, hair sample for chronic exposure. Every test confirmed what Dr. Harlan had suspected. Thallium, low but consistent levels over years. Enough to explain the dizziness, the nausea, the fog that had settled over my thoughts like damp rot. They'd found more in the house, trace amounts in the coffee grinder, residue in the sugar bowl I used every morning. Mark had been careful, never enough for acute poisoning, never enough to raise red flags on a routine physical, just enough to keep me off balance, dependent, his. A detective had come by earlier, mid-40s, tired eyes, notepad in hand. He'd ask gentle questions. When did the symptoms start? Did I notice anything unusual about Mark's routines? Had he ever been violent? I answered in fragments. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. The detective nodded, wrote everything down, promised they were searching the house top to bottom. Basement, hidden room, laptop, files. They'd already found encrypted drives, more journals, fake IDs and a name. Different last name, different Garkier, different social. Ready for the relocation he'd planned. I didn't cry when he told me that part. I just stared at the IV line and watched the clear fluid drip. Dr. Harlan stayed longer than he had to. He sat in the vinyl chair beside the bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He hadn't changed since the night before. Same rumpled coat, same shadows under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "They're keeping you overnight for observation," he said quietly. "Kidney and liver function look okay so far, but thallium can linger. Prussian blue, that's the treatment. Binds to it, pulls it out through your stool. You'll take it for a few weeks. Chelation if the levels don't drop fast enough." I nodded. Words felt too heavy. He hesitated. "The police want to talk more tomorrow. They're building the case. Attempted kidnapping, poisoning, identity fraud, possible homicide in Ryan's accident. They exhumed the report on the wreck. Skid marks don't match weather conditions that night. Brake lines show campering. Old but clear under microscope." My throat closed. Ryan. Not just gone. Taken. "I should have seen it sooner," Harlan continued. "When Daniel, Mark, first came to me years ago, the questions were off. Hypotheticals about dependency, control, long-term manipulation. I thought it was intellectual, therapy fodder. Then he vanished, changed his name, resurfaced as Mark Ellis, married you 6 months later. I didn't connect the dots until your lab started showing anomalies, and his name kept appearing in background checks I ran quietly." "You ran checks on my husband?"
"I ran checks on anyone who seemed too perfect." He gave a tired half smile. Occupational hazard. I looked at him, really looked, not as my doctor, as the man who'd risked everything to slip me that note. "Why help me? You could have walked away." "Because someone had to." His voice cracked just a little. "And because you reminded me of someone I couldn't save. My sister. Similar story, different monster. She didn't get out." Silence stretched between us. I swallowed. "Is he talking?" Harlan shook his head. Not a word. Asked for his lawyer the second they Mirandized him, smiling the whole time, like it's all part of the plan. I closed my eyes, saw that last smile in the hallway. Private, possessive, certain. "They're holding him without bail," Harlan added. "Flight risk, danger to the community. Evidence is overwhelming. Basement alone is enough for attempted kidnapping and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Poison counts." I opened my eyes. "What happens now?" "You heal. Physically first, then the rest." He stood, adjusted my blanket like a father would. "You're not going back to that house. Ever. I've got a friend. Safe house up near Lake Norman. Off the grid. You can stay as long as you need. New phone, new accounts. I'll help with the paperwork." I nodded again. Too tired to argue. He paused at the door. "One more thing. They found letters in his cell already, addressed to you, unopened. They're holding them as evidence, but he's writing. He won't stop." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. After Harlan left, the room felt bigger, emptier. A nurse came in, checked vitals, asked if I wanted something for sleep. I said no. I didn't want to close my eyes yet. Not while the images were still so sharp. The rose petals crushed in my fist, the cuffs on Mark's wrists, the way he looked at me like I was still his. Morning came, gray and slow. Discharge papers, prescriptions, a social worker with kind eyes who talked about trauma counseling, support groups, restraining orders that would never be enough. I walked out of the hospital in borrowed scrubs and Harlan's coat. He waited at the curb in a nondescript gray sedan. No words at first, just drove. We didn't go to the safe house right away. He took me to a small diner off I-77, ordered coffee, toast, nothing heavy. I stared out the window at passing cars, normal people, normal lives. "You'll get there again," he said quietly. I didn't believe him. Not yet. But I sipped the coffee, black, no sugar, and it tasted clean. No metallic bite, no aftertaste. That was something.
Later, at the safe house, a modest cabin tucked among pines, I stood on the back porch and watched the lake ripple under a cold March wind. My phone, new, clean, sat silent in my pocket. No texts from old friends yet, no calls. Just quiet. I thought about the letters he'd written, the ones I'd never open. I thought about Ryan's smile in old photos. I thought about the woman I used to be, before the poison, before the perfect husband, before the basement. She wasn't gone, not completely. She was just waiting, for the shaking to stop, for the nightmares to fade, for the day I could look in a mirror and not see his reflection behind mine. I took a breath, deep, real. Then I went inside, locked the door, and started again.
I didn't cry when he told me that part. I just stared at the IV line and watched the clear fluid drip. Dr. Harlan stayed longer than he had to. He sat in the vinyl chair beside the bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He hadn't changed since the night before. Same rumpled coat, same shadows under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "They're keeping you overnight for observation," he said quietly. "Kidney and liver function look okay so far, but thallium can linger. Prussian blue, that's the treatment. Binds to it, pulls it out through your stool. You'll take it for a few weeks. Chelation if the levels don't drop fast enough." I nodded. Words felt too heavy. He hesitated. "The police want to talk more tomorrow. They're building the case. Attempted kidnapping, poisoning, identity fraud, possible homicide in Ryan's accident. They exhumed the report on the wreck. Skid marks don't match weather conditions that night. Lake lines showed tampering. Old, but clear under microscope." My throat closed. Ryan. Not just gone. Taken. "I should have seen it sooner," Harlan continued. "When Daniel, Mark, first came to me years ago, the questions were off. Hypotheticals about dependency, control, long-term manipulation. I thought it was intellectual, therapy fodder. Then he vanished, changed his name, resurfaced as Mark Ellis, married you 6 months later. I didn't connect the dots until your labs started showing anomalies, and his name kept appearing in background checks I ran quietly. You ran checks on my husband?"
6 months later, the air in Asheville smelled different. Crisp pine, wood smoke from distant chimneys, the faint sweetness of late summer wildflowers still clinging to the hills. I'd rented a small cabin on the edge of the Blue Ridge Parkway. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, a porch that overlooked a narrow creek, a wood stove that popped and hissed on cool evenings. No neighbors close enough to wave. No streetlights, just stars sharp enough to cut glass, and silence thick enough to swallow screams. I changed my name legally 3 months earlier. Emily Whitaker Ellis became Emily Harper, my mother's maiden name, simple, untraceable in the way only ordinary names can be. New social security number, new driver's license, new bank accounts. The U.S. Marshals hadn't gotten involved. Mark wasn't classified high enough for WITSEC, but the district attorney's victim advocate had walked me through every form, every signature, every small erasure of the life I'd once lived.
He paused at the door. "One more thing. They found letters, in his cell already, addressed to you, unopened. They're holding them as evidence, but he's writing. He won't stop." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. After Harlan left, the room felt bigger, emptier. A nurse came in, checked vitals, asked if I wanted something for sleep. I said no. I didn't want to close my eyes yet, not while the images were still so sharp. The rose petals crushed in my fist, the cuffs on Mark's wrists, the way he looked at me like I was still his. Morning came, gray and slow. Discharge papers, prescriptions, a social worker with kind eyes who talked about trauma counseling, support groups, restraining orders that would never be enough. I walked out of the hospital in borrowed scrubs and Harlan's coat. He waited at the curb in a nondescript gray sedan. No words at first, just drove. We didn't go to the safe house right away. He took me to a small diner off I-77, ordered coffee, toast, nothing heavy. I stared out the window at passing cars. Normal people, normal lives. "You'll get there again," he said quietly. I didn't believe him, not yet. But I sipped the coffee, black, no sugar, and it tasted clean. No metallic bite, no aftertaste. That was something.
The house in Charlotte was gone, sold at auction after the bank foreclosed. I didn't attend the closing, didn't want to see the red door painted over, the hydrangeas ripped out, the basement filled with concrete to seal it like a tomb. The realtor sent photos anyway. I deleted them without opening. I still woke up some nights gasping, sheets twisted around my legs, convinced I heard footsteps on the stairs. In the dream, it was always the same. Mark descending,
smiling that private smile, the one that said, "You're mine, and you always will be." I'd bolt upright, reach for the lamp, flood the room with light until the shadows retreated. The knife stayed under my pillow now, same chef's knife from the pantry that night. I'd never used it again, but its weight was comfort. Dr. Harlan, James now, since we'd crossed from patient doctor to something closer to friends, called every Sunday evening at 7 sharp. He'd left Charlotte too, quietly transferred his practice to a small clinic outside Raleigh. We talked about mundane things first, the weather, a patient he couldn't stop thinking about, the new coffee shop that opened near his apartment. Then the real conversation. "How are the nightmares?" he'd ask.
Less frequent, I'd say. 3 this week instead of 7. Progress. He never pushed, never asked why I still hadn't dated, why I kept the cabin lights on all night, why I checked the locks twice before bed. He just listened. The trial was coming in the fall. First-degree attempted murder by poisoning, aggravated stalking, identity theft, tampering with evidence in Ryan's death investigation. The DA had built a mountain of proof. The journals, the encrypted drives, the thallium traces in the coffee grinder, the fake passports with my photo and different names. They'd even found correspondence between Mark and a private investigator from 2016, photos of Ryan's car the week before the crash, notes on brake line vulnerability. Mark hadn't taken a plea. He'd fired 2 lawyers already. The third one was fighting to suppress the basement evidence, claiming illegal search. It wouldn't work. The police had entered on an emergency domestic disturbance call, Harlan's anonymous tip, and found me bleeding from a wrist twist, Mark with a fresh knife wound. Probable cause was ironclad. Still, every time the court date got mentioned in the news alerts, I couldn't stop myself from reading. My stomach knotted. He was in maximum security now, isolated after he'd tried to charm a guard into passing messages. The articles called him charismatic, calculated, a master manipulator. They never mentioned how his voice used to sound when he said good morning, how his hand felt on the small of my back, how safe I'd once felt in the circle of his arms. Last week, a package arrived at the cabin. No return address, plain brown paper, my new name typed on the label. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity, the same curiosity Mark had always praised, then punished, won. Inside, tissue paper, a single red rose petal, dried and brittle, edges curled black. And a note, familiar handwriting, slanted, precise. Phase 4 begins. No signature, no threat, just those 3 words. I stood on the porch for a long time, petal in my palm. Wind lifted it, carried it over the railing, down toward the creek. I watched it spin and disappear into the water. Then I went inside, burned the note in the wood stove, watched the paper curl and blacken until nothing remained but ash. I didn't call the police, didn't call Harlan, didn't panic, because I knew what Phase 4 was. It was him, trying to reach me from inside a concrete box, trying to remind me he still existed in my head, but he didn't own that space anymore. I kept the lights on at night, always, every lamp, every bulb, until the cabin glowed like a beacon against the dark mountains. Not because I was afraid of the dark, because I refused to hide in it. I started writing again, small things at first, journal entries, short stories, a memoir I might never publish, words about the woman who'd rebuilt her life twice, about grief that didn't end with a funeral, about love that turned out to be poison, and survival that tasted like freedom. Some mornings I hiked the trails behind the cabin, steep switchbacks, wild rhododendrons still blooming late, the creek rushing cold and clear. I carried bear spray and the knife, but mostly I carried silence, the kind that let me hear my own thoughts without someone else's voice overlaying them. I wasn't healed, not yet, maybe not ever completely, but I was breathing. I was choosing my own coffee, black, no sugar, no aftertaste. I was choosing my own name. I was choosing to keep going. And every night, when the wind moved through the pines and the creek sang its slow song, I reminded myself, some monsters don't stay locked away. They wait. They write letters. They send petals. But they don't get to win. Not anymore.
I turned off one lamp that night. Just one. The room dimmed, but it didn't go dark. And for the first time in months, I slept through until morning.